When it comes to spring and summertime, wood planters are by far the best-selling product I have built. Even when I was doing highly customized vanities or custom pieces for customers, I always made time to have an inventory built up of planters. Why, you might ask? Well, they're super low stress builds, they produce a high profit, and the demand for them is always there. In this video, I want to share 4 planters that I have personally designed, built, and sold to get you started on your planter arsenal. I do have dedicated videos for all these planters on this channel, but I wanted to put a compilation video together of all 4 of them in one spot, and with springtime here, there was no better time to do that than now. Now the first one only takes 2 fence pickets, and it is so simple to build, I don't even offer plans for it. The rest of them in this video, I do have plans available down in the description if you're interested. But as for this one goes, no plans needed. Just follow along the video. Here it is. These things are so easy, you're not even gonna believe it. So first we need 2 fence pickets. These are just pressure treated fence pickets you can pick up from Lowe's or Home Depot. They're 6 foot long, 5/8 thick, and about 5.5 to 5 5/8 inch wide. First, we're gonna take them to the miter saw and get our cuts going. Alright, so first is first, with both your pickets stacked on top of each other at the miter saw, you're gonna wanna cut 4 pieces at 11 inches. The design of these planter boxes are super easy. You can scale them up or down, whichever you're looking for. I'm doing it this way because it only takes 2 fence pickets, which cost about $2.30 right now. So for under $5, you can have a really nice square pressure treated planter. And then for under $10, you can have a set of them. 4 at 11 inches. Now you're gonna wanna cut 4 more at 9 3/4 inches. 4 at 9 3/4. So those 8 pieces will be your side panels. Now we're gonna wanna cut 4 at 13 inches. These are gonna be our legs as well as the top trim pieces. Okay, so out of our 2 fence pickets, we got 4 at 9 3/4, 4 at 11 inches, and 4 at 13 inches. Now we're gonna take 2 of our 13-inch pieces and rip them into 1 1/4 inch strips. 1 1/4. Alright, so there's 8 strips, 13 inches long, 1 1/4 inch wide. Then you'll take the other 2 13-inch boards and you're gonna rip these into 4 2-inch strips. 4 2-inch strips. And then these are the extra from the 2-inch strips. You're gonna wanna set them aside too, because we'll be using them later. Okay, so now you're gonna wanna take brad nailer with 1-inch brad nails. Take 2 of your 11-inch pieces. Then what you're gonna wanna do is put a bead of glue down each side of them. Take 2 1 1/4 wide pieces, 13 inches long. Brad nail it. You're gonna wanna have a wet rag handy too, just to clean out the squeeze out.
1 brad nail there, 1 brad nail there, 1 brad nail, 1 brad nail.
Another 1 1/4 piece right on this side. Once the glue dries, the brad nails aren't gonna really do much. It's just basically to hold it together till the glue dries. So there's one panel, and then just repeat this 1 more time. Okay, so now with your 9 3/4 inch pieces, these are gonna fit inside those panels. So what you're gonna do, take a 2-inch width piece that's 13 inches long. Take one of the panels you just put together. You're gonna wanna make it flush on the outside. This is the outside of your box. And then just with a sharp pencil, strike a line right here on the inside. And then just put an X right here. Grab one more leg, flip it over, and do the same thing. Strike a line, X. Okay, so now where the X's are, glue on that side of the line, and then glue your 9 3/4 inch panels right lined up with that line, and then just a couple brad nails. Okay, now just, this is the outside of it, so you just want to clean up any squeeze out on this side. Another panel. Okay, so now you got 2 panels that look like this, and then you got 2 of them that look like this. Now what you gotta do, you wanna glue on the inside right here. I put one little strip where the legs come together down there. Then your smaller panel's just gonna fit right inside of that. Stand it up, and then just pin it together. There you go. Then just repeat that. The only difference with this last panel is you gotta glue it all together. Do both sides at the same time. And another thing to mention is make sure you're using an exterior grade wood glue. Starting to look like something. Now take 4 more pieces that were ripped down to 1 1/4 inch and just cut 45 miters on them so that they're all the same size. They're 13 inches right now, so what you want to do is make your long points as close to 13 inches as possible. So just cut them all together. And from the long edge to the long edge, you should have really close to 13 inches. Then you just want to put your trim pieces on. Usually it covers up about half, overlaps about half of that board. So you just kind of want to mock it up and figure out where you got to glue it. Okay, so now this planter is pretty much done. What you can do is leave it just like this, and a lot of these popular ferns that you buy will fit just right in there, and the lips will sit right on the planter like that. And I'd say that looks pretty darn good. But if you would like, which I like to do, is I like to put a bottom on it. So what I do is I rip this down the middle, nail it in the bottom, and then I always have extra scrap pieces laying around, so I put a floor in it. But that's completely up to you. I just like to have a base in it. But the lips from those flower pots do sit in there pretty good. So as far as finish goes on these, I leave them natural. And within a week, the green pressure treated color goes away and it'll darken to a natural brown color. I leave them natural because I sell them, and I just let the customer choose what they want to do with them, whether they want to leave them as is, stain them, or paint them to the color of their desire. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please hit that thumbs up button, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next video. Now as for that one goes, like I said, it only takes 2 pickets, and it is super easy to build. The downside is, your customer might want a larger planter. But for the second one, this planter is gonna be perfect for, like, on either side of a garage door when you see a larger planter. These ones are perfect for this. Now these ones do take 5 fence pickets per planter, but because they're larger, you'll be able to charge quite a bit more. And this one is probably the most complex planter that I have available. I still make it super easy through the video, but like I said, I do have plans available if you're at all interested and I like to have physical plans. So here we go with this one, 5 fence pickets. Follow along on this build. Alright, I got my 5 fence pickets, and to start off, what I like to do right off the bat is just take my orbital sander with an 80 grit pad on and just sand over these really quickly just to smooth them out. Also, if you guys don't have an orbital sander, these little things are awesome. You buy the same pads for the orbital sander. It's just a styrofoam sanding mouse. I get it on Amazon and it's only like $7. So I just put a aggressive pad on. That's all you gotta do. And it makes it smooth. So that's a lot cheaper alternative. I'm using the orbital sander because I got one. Another thing this is going to help do is it's going to help it take the stain better. I am leaving a little bit of rough cut there just because I like that look. So it'll help it take stain better. It's also going to help the glue joints stick a lot better because the glue tends to not stick well to the rough surface. Alright, we are sanded smooth. Next up, take 2 of your pickets over to the miter saw. We're going to start cutting them down to their lengths. Now I do cut these cut lengths in a specific way to maximize the material because, as I said, we're building these with 5 fence pickets. So I just cut it in a way where there's no waste. But if you don't really care about that, you can cut the cut lengths however you want. I'll leave the cut lengths in the description. And you can jump ahead to the assembly portion of this video. I'll organize the video in chapters so you can jump around to wherever you want to go. Alright, the first thing I like to do with the miter saw, and this is going to go for all the pickets I start with, is get rid of that factory edge. So just square them up, just take as little as possible off, like an inch off. I'm going to start off with the longest cut length that we have to do, and that is 24 inches. So I'll stop at 24 inches. With two pickets stacked on top of each other, make your first cut 24 inches. Remove one picket and make one more at 24 inches. Next cut lengths you'll need, you're going to take a full third picket, stack what's left of your first and second picket. You're going to want to make your stop block 22 inches. Okay, so with it all set up, 3 stacked on top of each other, your first 2 partials and a full one, and you can go through and cut all of them, as many as you can to 22 inches. It's going to come out at 6 of them at 22 inches. So when I'm cutting these at the miter saw, any of the excess from your cutoffs, I like to set aside to the left of my miter saw. We're going to be using a couple of these pieces in the end to add a couple bells and whistles to the planter box. Okay, I'm going to grab picket number 4, square it up, and cut one more at 22 inches. That's going to give you a total of 7 at 22 inches long. We're still on picket number 4 here. Make one board 16 1/4. Okay, with the rest of picket number 4, to finish this off, we're going to cut 2 out of this at 13 1/2. Lastly, at the miter saw for now, take picket number 5, cut 3 at 12 1/4. With what's left out of picket number 5, just set that aside for now. With your cut lengths all set, now we're going to start moving over to the rip cuts. So take your 3 24-inch pieces you started with, start with 2 of them, set your fence to 2 inches, and cut 4 of them at 2 inches wide. Make sure your cutoffs you set aside, because we're doing them next. Okay, with those cut, we're going to want to switch our fence to 1 3/8. Alright, so with your leftover of what you just cut out of those boards, you can get 2 at 1 3/8, and then you cut 2 more out of your full one. Okay, with these first 8 pieces cut, at this point I like to start labeling them just to keep everything clear and on track, because you can lose track if it's all just in a big pile. So I just take painter's tape at this point, take a Sharpie, just put a little arrow, and these are going to be your lag assemblies. Now we're going to move on to our 22-inch lengths, and included in this 22-inch length is our leftover piece from the previous cuts. But as you remember, this is 24 inches, so make sure you cut this down to 22 inches. Then you can add it to this. Alright, so these are going to make up our upright pieces, and as you probably saw in the beginning of the video, my upright pieces, I have 3 different widths, just to give it a little extra added look. If you want to make this part easier, you can make all these rips to 1.5 inches. So make all your uprights 1.5 inches. It's all going to go together the same in the end. I just have 3 separate widths that I'm going to be doing, but if you want to keep this easy, make them all 1.5 inches, and you'll only need 24 at 1.5 inches if you do that. But moving on to what I'm going to do, I have 4 wide uprights. They're going to be in the middle of each one, and those are going to be to 2.5 inches. So I got to cut 4 at 2.5 inches. Moving on to medium uprights, I'm going to bump the fence back to 1 3/8 and cut 8 medium uprights. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 8 medium uprights. Okay, with everything set here, with what's left, you're gonna cut 16 at 7/8. And just label uprights. Now you're gonna wanna take your 1 16 1/4 board, as well as a 12 1/4. Set your fence to 2 inches and rip 4 of them at 2 inches. Label these 4 pieces, trim, and set aside. Alright, so with everything left, you got 2 at 13 1/2, 2 at 12 1/4. These are all going to get ripped to 2 3/4, and it's going to give you 8 of them at 2 3/4. Okay, so that'll give you 8 total. These are going to be your cross sections. Alright, our cut lengths are all made. Now it's time to start assembling. Okay, so to start, we're going to take 2 of your lag cuts. So these are 2-inch width and 24 inches long. So they're your wider lag cuts. So take 2 of them. Also, you're going to want to take 2 of your cross section pieces and make sure you're getting 2 longer ones. You've got 4 longer cross sections and 4 shorter ones. So make sure the longer cross sections go with the wider legs. Okay, so take your 2 24-inch lengths, put them together so they're even, and you're going to want to measure 2 inches up. Make a mark on both of them with a square. That'll be your bottom. Now, take your cross section and you're just going to make one more reference mark. Put it flush on the outside and then just make a mark. Go all the way to the top, make it flush again, and make another mark. And then do the same on this. At this point, you're going to want to get some glue. Make sure it's a good exterior grade glue. I've got Gorilla Glue, which is good for interior as well as exterior. Then you're also going to want an 18 gauge brad nailer with 1-inch brad nails. If you don't have a brad nailer, just use 1-inch screws or 1-inch finish nails and hammer them in. Okay, so this, like I said, is going to be the bottom of the planter box. What you're going to want to do is take a cross section, and these lines that you marked is where your cross sections are going to get glued and brad nailed into. So just put a little glue here and then just brad nail it in there. Same on this side. Flip it around. Now this is the top of your planter box, so just put glue here and here, and then you can glue this one straight up flush with the top. Okay, set this piece aside for now. Now repeat that with your 2 leftover cross pieces that are longer, as well as your 2 2-inch by 24-inch width. And then after you do that, you're going to want to do the same exact thing, but do it with your shorter cross pieces, as well as your thinner lag assemblies. Alright, so basically these are going to make up your 4 side panels. These 2 smaller ones with the cross connectors that are smaller in length, and then the 2 lag assemblies that are 1 3/8 rather than 2-inch, is going to fit in between the 2-inch assemblies. It'll all make sense once we put it together. Alright, at this point we got 4 separate panels. 2 of them are smaller, 2 of them are wider. And now it's time to start putting the spindles or the uprights on them. Now, even though these are larger panels, with what's in between the legs, they are going to be the same. So that's 10 3/4, a little over, 10 3/4, a little over. That's going to make the placement of the uprights the same on all the panels. So basically what I've done is take one of your scrap cutoffs and cut it to 1/4 inch on your table saw. That's the exact measurement you need between the uprights. And earlier when I said you can cut all of your uprights to 1.5 inches, that's the same. So you will need 6 for each panel. 6 at 1.5 inches, and you just use the same 1/4 inch spacing. If you're using a different width uprights like I am, you put in your spacer, take a narrow one, bead a glue on each side, and then just brad nail it in place. You might be a little off on your length. The bottom will never get really seen, so just make sure the top is flush. Now get a medium upright. Just make sure your nail holes are kind of in line. It just makes it look a little better in the end. Now we're going to do another narrow. And then in the middle is going to be our wide one. So the pattern I'm using for the multiple width uprights is I'm going narrow to medium upright, back to narrow upright, and then your middle one is your wide upright. And then you finish it back off with narrow, medium, narrow. If your spacing on the last one is not exact, just split the difference. You'll never even notice. There you go. One panel down. Now repeat that on the next 3. Alright, next we're going to want to start putting this together. I've got 6 by 1 inch wood screws. This is just what I got, but if I were you, I would use 1 1/4 inch long for this. It's just going to have a little more holding power. But basically what we're going to do now is you take your panel with the wider legs, and then what you're going to do is take the narrower one, and what that's going to do is your narrower one is going to bump into this one. So it's going to go like that. And it fits right in between there. Then what you want to do is just pre-drill 3 of them for screws and just put screws in. You can also wood glue it as well, just for a little extra holding power. So what I'll do is just wood glue right here, just a strip. And then lift it up, fit them together. Top. Just make sure you're pre-drilling, because if you don't pre-drill, this stuff will split super easily. So what I like to do is 1 at the top, 1 roughly in the middle, and then 1 towards the bottom. There you go. Then you can put this one in, and just make sure when you put them all together, just have the screws even. It'll just look a lot better. Just make sure when you're assembling these and you are using glue, just make sure to have a wet towel ready, because any squeeze out you're going to want to wipe up. Okay, we are rolling right along on this. Next up, you're going to want to put the top trim pieces on. Alright, trim pieces are pretty easy. Just glue on these solid parts here all the way around. And then your shorter ones are going to fit on the inside of these. And then I just brad nail them. These holes here I'm going to fill, so don't worry too much about that. And then your long ones will fit on either side. If it's a little overhang, no biggie, because we're going to clean that up during the final sanding. Alright, once you get to this point, this is the size pot I'm going to be using in here. So basically I want this to sit a couple inches down. So what I'm going to do is just take some measurements, mark what I need, and then we'll put the bottom floor in. But the good thing about this is you can pretty much use any size pot you want. Alright, so out of the leftover scraps you have, measure where you want to put your bottom, however long your pot is. You want your pot to sit, you know, roughly below this lip probably. So out of what was left over, I cut a couple pieces on each side, and then I cut a couple full pieces that will fit in there to be the floor. And if your planter's weak from side to side, screw them down and it'll stiffen it right up. Alright, so this planter can pretty much be used as is right now, but I'm going to give it a little extra something. So, because these top trim pieces are only brad nailed down, they're glued and brad nailed, and people tend to move planters around a lot, decide where they like them, what looks best. So what I'm going to do is add some handles. I don't want them lifting from this trim. So to reduce the chance of that happening, I'm gonna be using these cutoffs from the picket, cut them down to 3 inches, and they're gonna go right here. And then I'm gonna put rope, decorative rope handles on them. So basically all I'm gonna do is screw this to here, drill 2 holes, cut a rope 24 inches long, tie a knot on one end, put it through one hole, make a handle, put the other end through the other hole, tie another knot, boom, you got a handle. Now at this point I like to take a little bit of wood glue and just put it in all these top trim brad nail holes. I don't worry about the side ones. Once it gets weathered, you're never really gonna see them anyway. Just these top ones I like to plug. So I'll do this, give it one quick sanding. As far as finish goes, I'm just using this Thompson water seal. I picked it up from Lowe's, it was like 20 bucks. You can use the planter as is without sealing it. The ones I did last year, I have not put anything on it. It's been over a year and they've held up really well. This will just give added durability, and I mix in a little bit of stain with this to darken it. And I just apply it with these little brushes. They're super cheap, they're like 50 cents from Harbor Freight. And then I just throw them out after. Now as far as pricing these, because I know people are going to ask, I usually don't get on the subject of pricing just because people on YouTube watch it from all over the globe. And every location's different. I don't know what your competition is like where you live, what your lumber prices are like. Your profit margins might be different. As I said, each fence picket's $1.97 a piece, and I use 5 of them. So it's about $10 in lumber just to make these. And for a planter this size, I would probably start off at $100 each for these. Because like I said, a planter this size is kind of difficult to find, and where else are you getting something like this? But ultimately pricing it's completely up to you. You build your own, make it your own, do what you need to do. That'll pretty much do it for these large planters. On the third planter you'll want to make available in your planter arsenal, we take a little bit of a different approach. So most of all the planters you're going to find on YouTube are built with fence pickets, and for good reason. They're very cheap, they're pressure treated, and they're easy to get your hands on. This one I take a little bit of a slightly different approach and I add in landscape timbers. Now these ones are easy to find and they're still pretty cheap, but because I add in landscape timbers, this just changes the whole look of this planter. And out of all the ones I've built, this one's probably my favorite. It's a little more in depth, but I still make it super easy in the video. And the good thing with this one is the final product stands out against any other one you're gonna find on the marketplace. So grab yourself some fence pickets, landscape timbers, and follow along. All right, so right off the bat, before we get started, I just wanna say this planter build is best to build in increments of 3, because the 8-foot landscape timber you buy for the lag portion of the planter, one 8-foot timber is gonna be enough to build 3 planters. So it's best to buy one 8-foot timber along with 9 fence pickets, and that's gonna give you 3 total planters. For the case of this video, I am just gonna build 1, but if you wanna batch these out, it's definitely best and most efficient to build in quantities of 3. Alright guys, I got my 3 pickets, and just the first thing I like to do before you start cutting them into the length is just give them a light sanding. These are rough cut, so you really just want to get the roughness off of them, and make sure you get on the edges too. Alright, we are all sanded up here. We're ready to start cutting these cut lengths. I'm going to leave the cut lengths in the description, and also I'm going to be building this by the plans that I made. They're really, really detailed plans. It's going to have an optimized cut list, how to cut the landscape timber legs, and just a step-by-step tutorial. So if you're going to build a bunch of these, I highly recommend getting these plans. I'll leave them in the description. I spent a lot of time making them, and you're supporting the channel with every purchase of plans. So I appreciate that. Let's jump into this. With every fresh picket you start with, always cut off that raw edge. Just a 1/8 inch, it doesn't need to be any more. It just gives you a lot cleaner edge. Alright, so initially there's just 3 cut lengths that you gotta do. You gotta do 1 at 15.5, 8 of them at 13.5, and 7 of them at 11.5. The one piece at 15.5, I just measure and cut it. But on my continuous cuts, the 13.5, I need 8 of them. I set a stop block for that, as well as the 11.5, where I need 7 of them. This just makes quick and accurate work of cutting them down. Alrighty, so now you should have 1 at 15.5, 8 of them at 13.5, and 7 of them at 11.5. Now we gotta jump in to the landscape timbers, which is gonna make up our legs. Like I said, there's enough to do 3 planters. I'm just building 1 right now. I gotta cut 2 of them at 15.5 inches out of this. Alright, cut lengths are all set. Now we can head over to the table saw. Alright, so first you're gonna take your 15.5 length, as well as one 11.5 length. These are gonna be our top trim pieces. So we're gonna set the fence to 2 inches and rip 4 of them to 2 inches. Okay, now take 4 11.5 pieces, and out of each one you're gonna wanna cut them at 2 3/4. So this is gonna give you 8 of them at 2 3/4. This is gonna be your cross connector pieces. Alright, and to finish off our rip cuts for now, take 4 of them at 13.5 and rip each of these down to 4 7/8. This is going to make up your narrow sidewalls. With what's left over out of the pickets, you should have 4 13.5 and 2 at 11.5. We're keeping these the full widths, so no need to rip them down. Also, these cutoffs you just did, save them. These are going to be your lip supports that we put in at the end. Alright, now all we got left is the landscape timbers. These will vary a little bit in size, but basically all we want to do is have the flat portion of these on your table. The rounded portion will be against the fence, and we're just going to rip these in half. This is going to make up our legs. So in my case, I have my blade centered at 1 7/8. So just, it'll be near around that for you, but just double check it and you should be good to go. Raise your saw blade all the way up, and we're just cutting it directly in half. Just be careful making these cuts. As I said, the flat reference mark is against the table, but you do have a rounded edge that's against the fence. So just make sure most of your pressure is down towards the table. I've never had a problem, but being that it's not a flat reference against the fence, just take your time and take it easy. Alrighty, time to start assembling. So just to go over what we got: 4 legs, 4 wide sidewalls, 4 narrow sidewalls, 8 cross connectors, your trim pieces, and then your floorboards. To start, we're going to take 2 narrow sidewalls and 2 cross connectors. You'll need a brad nailer with 1-inch brad nails, or if you don't have a brad nail, get 1-inch finish nails, hammer and nail it, old school. Alrighty, so it's a super simple first step. You just take your 2 narrow sidewalls, put them together. All we're going to do is glue towards the top and the bottom of them. Make sure you got an exterior grade glue. And then all we're going to do is take cross connectors, and you're going to put it flush on top and bottom. And then just by feeling an eye, kind of just make sure it's centered. Make sure each lip on each side, here and here, is about the same. It should be roughly 7/8. And then just brad nail it. Flip it around. And then you're going to do the same thing here. Don't worry about the nail holes out here. This is going to be the inside of your planter, and you ain't going to see it. Now set that aside and just repeat on your next 2 narrow sidewalls with 2 new cross connectors. Okay, now with each of the panels you just made, All you're going to want to do is take 2 of your lag assemblies, glue here and here, make sure it's flush on the top up here. Optionally, you can leave 1-inch brads. If you want a little more holding power, you can switch to 1.25" brad nails here, just to give it a little more holding power while the glue dries. So now this is the outside of your box. Just make sure you clean up this glue squeeze out. Now just repeat that with your other panel. Okay, we got our 2 panels made. Now all we're going to do is simply connect these together. And how we're going to do that, grab your remaining 4 cross connectors, 1/8" drill bit, and you're just going to want to make some pilot holes so that these don't split. I do 1 on each end. Grab one of your panels, flip it over, and all we're going to do is glue them on to these cross connectors. I'm using 8 by 1.25" wood screws. Exterior, make sure they're exterior. And as I said, I'm just putting 1 screw in each, and just make sure it's flush on the top up here. Next up, you probably guessed it, connect the ends of these to these. And these ones you just don't want to glue all at once, all together. Okay, we are getting there. All we want to do next is now take your 4 wide side panels. These are the ones we didn't rip down at all. Alright, I moved you guys a little closer here so you can see, but basically all we're doing here is connecting the wide side panels. If you did switch to 1.25" brad nails, now is the time to switch back to 1-inch brad nails. Otherwise you'll blow through the inside, which isn't a big deal because it's in the inside, but you would still be able to tell at the top of the planter. And basically all we're going to do is split the difference between these 2 panels, which is roughly going to be 1/8" gap between each one. And all I like to do here is brad nail from the outside, but I only do 2 on each end for the outside. Make sure you're flush at the top. Alright, now because we only put 2 brad nails from the outside, I like to bring it back up here, put one of your floorboard pieces down here to have some pressure to push against, and nail a couple from the inside too, just to give it extra holding power. Alright, now I'm going to install the top trim pieces. I always start with the 11.5" trim pieces, the smaller ones. Nail those on the front and back side and make sure your reveal's showing right here. If you aren't going to do the optional rope handles, which I'm going to be installing next, your best bet is to pre-drill and screw these down with 1.25" screws, because this is more than likely where people are going to be lifting it from if you don't have those handles. And screws will just give it more holding power rather than brad nails. Now you put your long trim on, and these are going to go onto this right here. That'll go right over. There'll be no reveal. We're going to add that next. Alright, so like I said, you've got a reveal right here from that cross connector, but the way the top trim goes on, that's flush with this other cross connector. So out of the strips that you had from ripping down on the table saw, you've got some scraps. You cut these to length. Typically, it's 10.25. Brad nail those in right here, so it'll create a reveal on all 4 sides. Alright, now the only two pieces you should have left are the two full width pieces that are 11.5 inches long. These are going to be your floorboards. And these are going to set on your bottom cross connector pieces. So I just put a bead of glue on each cross connector it's going to hit. And pop them in. Then as the glue dries, you can just tack it down with your brad nailer if you can get it in there. If not, you can screw it down. Alrighty guys, if you decide to install the rope handles, which I think gives it a really unique look, it kind of sets it off, gives it kind of another selling point, a unique look that compared to others makes it look a little better. So you're going to need some 1/2 inch sisal rope, it's called. It's just kind of like a decorative rope. You'll need 2 lengths at 2 foot each. And all you're going to want to do is to determine the front of yours, the rounded portion of the legs, I like as the front. So therefore on the flat side, that's where I put my handles. So basically all you're going to want to do is you go through your wide panels, through the cross connectors inside, and I basically center them in the panel and center it in the cross connector. There's no specific placement for it. And just a 1/2 inch drill bit through. Better to have these on when you're drilling instead of on your head. Take a piece, put it through and tie a knot right at the end. It's pretty self-explanatory. Go through that hole, tie another knot on this end to tighten them. Push it against and just pull and it'll tighten the knot. And then there you go. Alright, so for finishing, I just like to take this Thompson's water seal. This is just clear. You can get stained versions of this too. I prefer to mix my own stain, so I use a little bit of stain in here and then pour this in with the stain and mix it. I just take a cheap brush and just brush it on just to seal this up. There's all kinds of things you can finish this with. This is just what I picked up from my local home center, and I used it on some planters that have been sitting out in the rain for a while, and this stuff works pretty good. It beads off the water really nicely. There you have it guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to share pictures with me if you decide to build them. If you purchase the plans, thank you. Let me know what you think about them down in the comments below. Catch you in the next video. Now the final planter in this compilation video is this one right here. I actually just built this one a few weeks ago, and this one we go back to the basics. So it's just like the first planter I shared in this video, except it uses 3 pickets instead of 2, and because of that you get a larger planter. And for just adding 1 more picket, this is quite a bit larger, and it's a really simple minimalist design. So grab yourself 3 fence pickets and get started with this one. So first step is to sand the roughness out. The fence pickets are pretty rough cut. There's a lot of stuff hanging off of them, so I use an 80 grit sandpaper to just run it over real quick just to smooth it out. Nothing too crazy. I like to keep a little bit of the rough cut there, but not so rough where you get a sliver just moving the thing around. So you might be wondering why I'm calling this the Rambler Planter. Well, as some of you know, I live on the road full time in my 5th wheel camper, and I bounce around from RV park to RV park. And this particular RV park I'm staying at is called Rambler's Rest. It's in Venice, Florida. So I named it the Rambler. Alrighty, here we go with the cut lengths, and I'm not joking when I say I made this planter super easy to make. Just follow along. As I said, plans are in the description because I know some of you like to have physical plans in hand. But for starters, we're taking all 3 fence pickets and we're ripping them down to 3 inches. So now you should have 3 full lengths at 3 inches wide, and your 3 offcuts, which will be roughly 2 3/8. They will probably be a little over that just because these fence pickets vary so much in width and they're not usually perfect like dimensional lumber is. So double check your offcuts, and if they're a little over like mine were, rip them down to 2 3/8. If they're exactly at 2 3/8 or even a hair under, No biggie, just leave them, you're good to go. So basically this planter is going to be made up with two different sub-assemblies. There's going to be an A side panel and a B side panel. And there's going to be two of them for each, making up a total of 4 panels. So what I do is cut all the cut lengths for the A side and B side panels, which is the legs, the middle boards, as well as the cross connectors. The trim pieces and the floorboards I will cut after out of the excess pieces at the end. I'll show you that. But while cutting these, be sure to keep everything labeled. The only difference with the cross connectors is that they need to be 1 1/8 in width. So I ripped the 2 3/8 in half, and that gives me 2 cross connectors for each piece. Alright guys, let me show you what we got here. So basically out of all this, we are going to make 4 separate panels. There's going to be 2 identical A side panels and then 2 identical B side panels. So what I got here is 4 A side legs. These are the A cross connectors, I call them. These will all be in the plans if you want to purchase the plans. They're only $5 and it supports the channel. So these are the middle boards. These are A and B, but they're identical. The B cross connectors, and finally the B legs. So we're going to put this together first, and then there's going to be 2 other cut lengths that we got to do. The trim pieces out of what's left, as well as the floorboards if you decide you need those. Okay. We are going to start with the B side. So basically you take 2 legs, make sure your show side is face down. Make it flush on top. You can pre-drill here. These screws say you don't have to, so I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to install my screws at an angle because I couldn't find 1 inch. They only had 1 1/4 inches, and it's a little long if I go straight in. So I'm going to do it at an angle. Same with over here.
Right, yeah.
Now what we're going to do on the bottom is measure up 1 inch. Then you're going to mount another B cross connector right above that line. Then these are going to be, they're called the A and B middle boards. So what you're going to do is evenly space them. I think it's about 3/8 of an inch. And you can also add glue. I'm just using screws. But I highly recommend, if you're selling these, to add a little exterior wood glue as well. And then screw, 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 screw. Okay. There's your first B panel. And we are going to rinse and repeat that with the rest of these B side pieces. Okay, so hopefully that was easy enough to follow, but here's a little better view of me putting the other B side together. So as I said, the A panel is very similar to the B side, but because the B panel fits inside, in between the A panels, when fully assembled, we have to use the B panel as a reference for making the A panels. So that's why we do the B panels first. There's another one. Now we'll move on to the A panels. Alright, your A side panels are going to be similar but different. So take 2 of your A side legs and then take one of the B panels that you just built, and your A side panel is going to connect to the outside of your B panel. So make this flush right here as best as you can, and then all you're going to do is mark your cross connector pieces right there on both top and bottom. Flip it over and do that same thing here. Just on the cross connector pieces right there. Now what that's going to do is mark exactly where you're mounting your A side cross connectors. Straight up to that line. Now at this point, it's the same. Take two of your A, B middle boards and evenly space them just like you did on the B side panel. Okay, there's an A panel. Rinse and repeat. I'll give you another view just like last time. Okay, another A panel. Okay, so we got two A panels, two B panels. Okay, now all that's left, like I said, take your A panel and the B panel is gonna fit inside of your A panel where you left these gaps. So simply, just like that. So 3 screws. Take your other B panel over here, fit it right in. And then the only thing I like to do is when you're screwing these in, just match your screw holes, just so they look uniform. And then what's left of the 2 3/8 width out of your excess pieces is where the trim pieces will come from. These are going to be cut at 45 degrees, and from the long point to the long point, it's going to be 15 3/8. Then you can just center them on top of the planter to make it look good, and glue and screw them. All that's left as far as the building goes is what's left of the 3-inch width pieces. So out of the excess of them, they will be cut to fit for the bottom of the planter, and those will be your floorboards. The trim in the floorboards may slightly vary, so always just double check your measurements according to your specific planter box. Then you just use a stain and a finish of your choice, and there you have it. I used a Minwax stain and then top coated it with Minwax Spar urethane, and that seems to be working really well. But many people ask how I'm selling my stuff on the road, and to be honest with you, I'm not really making this stuff to sell it. I simply like to design things just to keep this channel going, and then simply share that with you. Being that I live on the road at RV parks, I can't really batch this stuff out and make any real money. So I like to make one of the products, kind of like a framework for you to go by, and then hopefully sell the plans to that build where I can make a little income from that and keep that going. But what I would have done in the past is list them on Facebook Marketplace, and I have never had any problem selling what I make there. I would put these planters at probably 40 or 50 bucks a piece. There you have it, guys. The 4 planters you should have in your planter arsenal for the spring and summertime. Get them built, get them stained up or painted how you'd like, get them dressed up with some nice flowers, take some good pictures of them, and I guarantee you, I promise you, they will sell. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.